Let me read to you a passage from the 16th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 15 to 18. It's the Gospel for the feast of the conversion of St. Paul the Apostle on January the 25th. St. Mark writes, Jesus said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the good news to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned. And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands. And when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all. They will place their hands on sick people, and they will get well." That's from Mark chapter 16, verses 15 to 18, for the feast of the conversion of St. Paul the Apostle on January the 25th. Among other things, it suggests thoughts about religious certitude. What do I mean? Well, in my own opinion, the greatest philosophical issue in British and perhaps all of Anglo-Saxon philosophical thought has been the nature of knowledge and the possibility of certitude. Any sensible person knows that he can make mistakes, and that he has made many of them. They may have been very serious mistakes, which have brought him suffering and a lot of anguish to others. Mistakes that we can make occur because, for instance, of faulty sense perception. We think we see water on the roadway, but it turns out to be an optical illusion. A minor error, but an example of error nevertheless. We think we hear our own name being called, but our hearing is faulty, as might be our vision. We think we're tasting beef, but it turns out to be kangaroo. But of course, this faulty sense perception involves mistakes in reasoning on the objective data we apprehend through our senses. This ordinary experience of error has spawned certain philosophical currents which have ended in the denial of the power to know objective reality. René Descartes, who lived from 1596 to 1650, decided to bypass sense knowledge, which is to say, starting from external objects which we are sure we know for certain. He began with his own sure consciousness of thinking, and built up by logical processes a system of certitudes. The experiment was disastrous and resulted in human thought being locked up inside itself, unable to attain the certitude that is in fact natural, given and evident. What compounds this problem in the mind of many is that claims to truth are absolutely contested. This suggests, they assume, that objective truth is impossible. I mention this not to follow through with a philosophical analysis of the evident fact of human certitude, but because of its obvious links with religion. This is not just a question discussed in the soirees and journals of philosophy. It infects the popular mind and can debilitate a person's natural ability to know the truth. I have discussed religion with people who have never studied philosophy formally. They doubt the ability of the mind to attain certitudes. All that can be gained is a probability, at most your personal view on the matter. This was a major topic of concern for John Henry Newman in the 19th century. He wrote his greatest philosophical work, his Grammar of Assent, on it. As I say, let us not linger on the philosophy of it. The common sense of man knows that he attains and can attain certitude, even about matters that have not been observed and tested by him personally. For instance, we know for certain that Australia is surrounded by water. That having been said, it is critical that in religion certitude be attained. It can never be good enough to say to oneself that, well, all of this business of religion might be the case, but who is to say? The stakes are too high for that, and the dangers are too great. If there is a tsunami warning put out, it will not do to think that it may or may not happen. Who is to say? The dangers are too great. If God has revealed something, and there are tremendous factors involved, then one must do all one can to attain certitude about the matter. All of this brings us to our gospel that I read earlier, a gospel selected by the church for the feast of the conversion of St. Paul the Apostle. Consider what our Lord says about the acceptance of his word, the gospel. He says it must be accepted as being true and on faith, and if this acceptance is deliberately and knowingly refused, then the consequences will be eternal. The issue is reality and being certain of the reality that is involved. As we heard, Jesus said to them, "Go into the whole world and preach the good news to all creation. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, but whoever does not believe will be condemned." Mark chapter 16, verse 15 to 18. So real is all of this, so true, so objective, and so absolutely attainable by the human mind, that every man and woman will be judged on his performance in respect to it. Have you done your best to come to know the truth revealed by Jesus Christ? The gospel, that is. The stakes are very high because our Lord says that if a person does not believe, meaning of course in a sense that is culpable, then he will be condemned. It is a solemn teaching about a certainty. Our Lord is telling us that what he has revealed is an absolute certainty, and that it is very possible to attain certitude about it. Further, it is morally required of us that we do our best to attain this certitude. The incarnate God tells us that faith in his word is required of the man who hears it. And if this faith is not given, there will have to be very good reasons shown. It is the greatest of man's obligations in God's sight. On the feast of the conversion of St. Paul the Apostle, we think of one who thought he was certain about Jesus Christ and who persecuted him unremittingly. He then, in dramatic fashion, came to see that he had been in profound error. The fact of religious certainty and the critical importance of attaining to certitude about it is manifest in the conversion, in the life, and in the death of St. Paul the Apostle. He spent his life bearing witness to the certainty of Christ's revelation and of the moral necessity of every man and woman to be certain about it. This religious certitude, based on faith, is what can take a person to sanctity and to heaven.